Hey everyone, this is Kyle from Back Bar. Today we're going to be talking about 5 tips to help new bar managers manage their inventory. If you are a new manager behind the bar, then you might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of your new responsibilities, whether that's coming up with new cocktails for a new menu or trying to motivate bartenders, handling scheduling. There's a lot to learn and you have to learn it on the fly. So these tips are going to make things a little bit easier for you and help you get focused on what's most important behind the bar. So one of the most important new responsibilities you'll have is managing your inventory. Inventory is key behind the bar. You can't let it control you, you have to control it. That means you can't buy any new mezcal just because it was distilled in an abandoned Pizza Hut or anything that a sales rep brings in and lets you taste. That's because overstock is going to kill your profits and drive your liquor costs up. So the best way to control your inventory behind the bar is to really know what you have in stock. And in order to do this, you're going to have to keep a consistent inventory schedule. The most common strategy for this is an opening and closing inventory method. So at the end of this month, on the last day of the month, you'll take a full inventory of all of your bar products. And then the following month, on the last day, you'll take another inventory. And that way you can see how much you've used of a product in between those 2 time periods. If you want, you can also regiment it more and take inventory on a 4-week schedule. So each inventory session will have an equal amount of days in between it. So whether you take it monthly or 4 weeks, you need to keep consistent so you understand how much product you use in between that time period. For smaller bars, you might also take inventory weekly. If you're not doing that because you're a larger bar and it's just too much work to handle a weekly inventory, you should definitely do a spot or abbreviated inventory where you're taking a look at your inventory counts in order to place orders with your distributors each week. So the second tip for managing your inventory is to cost your drinks. This means knowing what each item behind your bar costs you when you pour it. So whether it's an ingredient in a cocktail, whether it's a draft beer or a can of beer, or even a glass pour of wine, you have to know what it costs you to pour that so you can properly price the item on your menu. What you're going to be able to do here is track your liquor costs, because the higher your liquor costs are, the lower your profits are going to be, and the harder it is for your bar to be successful. So knowing what your costs are will help you properly price your menu items. It'll keep things affordable for your guests, and it will help you track where your bar is performing well and where it's not performing so well. This way you can, get rid of items that don't really turn a profit for you, or make sure your cocktails aren't becoming too expensive with too many wild ingredients. Costing your drinks is going to help you understand the health of your bar. The third tip for managing inventory behind the bar is all about measurements. What's really important for bartenders to do is to jigger your pours. Because behind the bar, waste is a silent killer. And waste could come in all sorts of forms, like spillage, broken bottles, just a drink that a customer might return because they didn't like it. But one of the most common forms of waste is overpouring. So this is when a bartender, maybe even unknowingly, pours too much liquor in a drink, pours too much of another ingredient in a drink, and your costs are skyrocketing on those drinks, and the profits from the sale aren't covering that. So one of the most important things to do to cut down on waste is for each bartender to measure the amount of liquid they're putting in a drink. And the most handy thing is a jigger to do so. So the fourth tip for controlling inventory behind the bar is to track usage rates. This is one of the most important things you can do, because when you take inventory, it's more than just getting a head count for the number of bottles you have in your liquor room or behind the bar. You want to understand how quickly you go through a product, and usage rates are the best way to do that. In order to track usage rates, you're going to have to keep a consistent inventory schedule, which is where performing an opening and closing inventory really comes in helpful, because you need those 2 time periods to understand how much liquor you're going through in between those 2 points. So the data that you get from that is going to make you a better bar manager and also make your bar more likely to be successful. To find out the usage rate, you'll have to use a formula that also includes tracking the purchases you've made between your opening and closing inventories. So here's the formula for usage rate. It's opening inventory plus purchases received and subtract closing inventory in order to get your usage rate. So the 5th tip for helping control inventory behind the bar is to set par levels. A par level is essentially the amount of an item you need on hand at any given point to meet demand. So in order to set par levels, you'll need to know what your usage rates are. The key to managing inventory is having knowledge of your inventory. So make sure you stay in control by keeping a consistent inventory schedule, using data like par levels, usage rates to help you make better decisions, and to make sure your liquor room never gets out of control.